Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to Cheating Lady Secrets, where we dig deep into the wildest tales of love, betrayal, and resilience. Before we dive in, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Grab a snack and get cozy, because today's story is one you won't forget. Let's begin. It was a crisp October evening in 2019, in the charming little town of Maplewood. Picture this: red and gold leaves blanketed the streets, and the air carried the faint scent of fireplaces warming up for the season. On the surface, everything seemed picture-perfect in this quiet, postcard town. But for Sophia Allen, life was anything but perfect. Sophia was the kind of woman everyone in town admired. In her mid-30s, with striking hazel eyes and a soft laugh that could brighten even the gloomiest days, she seemed to have it all. A cozy home, a sweet 6-year-old daughter named Emma, and her husband, Derek, a man she once believed was her soulmate. Derek Allen was Maplewood's golden boy. Handsome, charming, and the owner of a growing construction company, he was known for his magnetic personality. Whenever he walked into a room, people noticed. Sophia often joked that Derek could talk his way into, or out of, just about anything. It was this charm that swept her off her feet a decade ago. But recently, Sophia felt something was off. She couldn't put her finger on it, but Derek had been distant. The little things that made their relationship sparkle, like their late-night talks or Sunday morning pancakes, had quietly disappeared. At first, Sophia dismissed it. "It's just work stress," she told herself. Derek's business had been expanding rapidly, and he often worked late nights. But then, there were the small signs that something wasn't right. Like how Derek had started guarding his phone like it held state secrets. Or how he suddenly began taking long showers when he got home, brushing off her questions with excuses about dust from the job site. And then, there was the lingering scent of perfume on his shirts, a scent Sophia didn't wear. "What are you being paranoid for?" Sophia muttered to herself one afternoon as she folded laundry. But deep down, she knew her instincts weren't wrong. Things came to a head on an unremarkable Tuesday evening. Sophia was picking up Emma from ballet class when her friend Amanda, a bubbly, no-filter kind of woman who always spoke her mind, mentioned seeing Derek at the new wine bar on Main Street. "Who was he with?" Sophia asked, trying to sound casual as she buckled Emma into the car. Amanda hesitated. "I mean, it could have been a work thing. But he wasn't alone." Sophia felt her stomach drop. That night, as she lay in bed listening to Derek's steady breathing, she couldn't shake the knot in her chest. Her mind raced with questions she didn't want to ask. Who was he with? Why hadn't he mentioned it? Was she imagining things, or had Derek truly changed? In the following days, Sophia began paying closer attention. She noticed how Derek seemed more preoccupied than usual. How he'd smile at his phone, then quickly tuck it away when she entered the room. How he avoided her gaze when she asked about his day. Still, she wasn't ready to confront him. Not yet. One Friday evening, while Derek was supposedly working late, Sophia decided to clean up his office, a small, cluttered space at the back of their home. It was innocent enough at first, she was just trying to tidy up. But as she moved a stack of papers, a receipt fluttered to the floor. It was from a fancy restaurant in the city, one they'd never gone to together. The date on it? The same day Derek claimed he'd been stuck in meetings all afternoon. Sophia's hands shook as she picked up the receipt. A lump formed in her throat, and for the first time, her suspicions solidified into something cold and undeniable. She didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, her mind replayed fragments of conversations, unexplained absences, and half-hearted excuses. By morning, she knew she couldn't let it go. The next day, while Derek was at work, Sophia called Amanda. "Amanda," she said, her voice trembling. "I need your help." Amanda was over in 15 minutes, armed with coffee and her no-nonsense attitude. Together, they began piecing things together. Sophia pulled out her laptop and started scrolling through their shared calendar, looking for inconsistencies. She found more than she wanted to. There were gaps in Derek's schedule, long afternoons when he'd claimed to be meeting clients, but had no record of where he'd been. Amanda leaned over the counter. Have you checked his social media? Or, like, his texts? Sophia shook her head. I can't. I don't want to cross that line. Amanda gave her a skeptical look. Soph, he might have already crossed it. Those words lingered in the air. That evening, as Derek showered, Sophia finally gave in to her curiosity. She opened his phone, he'd forgotten it on the kitchen counter, and started scrolling. Her heart raced as she clicked into his messages. Most of them were mundane, texts from clients, updates from his team. But then she saw one thread that made her blood run cold. It was with a contact named TJ. Innocent enough, right? Except TJ wasn't a guy. The messages were playful, flirtatious, and unmistakably romantic. Can't wait to see you again, babe. Last night was amazing. You're all I think about. Sophia's hands trembled as she read. Each word felt like a dagger. The sound of the shower turning off snapped her out of her shock. She quickly locked the phone and put it back where she'd found it. That night, Sophia barely spoke to Derek. The weight of what she'd discovered pressed down on her chest like a boulder. She needed time to think, to process. But one thing was clear: her marriage wasn't what she thought it was. And so, with Amanda's encouragement, Sophia decided to investigate further. Not because she wanted to hurt Derek, but because she needed the truth. Over the next week, Sophia quietly gathered evidence. She checked credit card statements, tracked Derek's locations on their shared family app, and even looked into TJ. The truth, when it finally came out, was more painful than she could have imagined. Sophia couldn't shake the unease that followed her after discovering Derek's messages with TJ. The next week was a blur of hushed phone calls, sleepless nights, and carefully guarded conversations. Every small moment with Derek felt like walking on broken glass, her trust fracturing further with every interaction. Yet she didn't confront him, not yet. Instead, she turned to Amanda, who quickly became her rock. Together, they pieced together Derek's movements. Amanda's casual curiosity turned into full-blown investigative mode, complete with Google searches, subtle questions around town, and even the occasional drive past Derek's favorite haunts. One rainy Wednesday, Sophia sat across from Amanda in the local diner, staring at a crumpled receipt Amanda had slid across the table. The name on it was unmistakable: the fancy wine bar on Main Street, paired with a hefty bill and a date that lined up with one of Derek's supposed late-night meetings. Tell me that doesn't scream date night, Amanda said, her voice sharp. Sophia bit her lip, her stomach twisting into knots. I don't want to jump to conclusions. Amanda raised an eyebrow. Girl, he's not exactly leaving much room for doubt here. This is textbook. First, the excuses. Then, the secrecy. And now, actual receipts? Sophia shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. But what if I'm wrong? Amanda reached for Sophia's hand, her tone softening. You're not wrong. You're just scared to admit it. That night, Sophia went home and stared at Derek's sleeping face for what felt like hours. She thought about their early years, how he'd held her hand through Emma's birth, surprised her with flowers just because, and even spent hours building a treehouse in their backyard despite never being much of a handyman. That man felt like a distant memory, replaced by someone she barely recognized. The next morning, Sophia made a decision. She needed clarity, and if Derek wasn't going to give it to her, she'd find it herself. She reached out to a private investigator. It wasn't an easy call to make, but it felt like the only way forward. Within days, she had answers, ones she wished she hadn't asked for. The investigator handed her a thick envelope filled with photos and logs. Sophia's heart sank as she flipped through images of Derek with a woman she didn't recognize. They were at the wine bar, their faces close, laughing in a way that felt too familiar. Other photos showed them walking hand in hand into a hotel downtown. The timestamp on the images aligned perfectly with Derek's work trips. The woman, it turned out, wasn't just anyone. She was Tessa Jacobs. TJ. A real estate agent Sophia had met once at a neighborhood party. Tessa was beautiful in a way that felt effortless, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a confident smile that seemed to light up every room. Sophia remembered feeling intimidated by her back then. Now, she felt something closer to anger. Sophia's hands shook as she set the photos aside. The reality of Derek's betrayal hit her like a wave, and for a moment she couldn't breathe. Her marriage was no longer just struggling, it was broken. That evening, Sophia finally confronted Derek. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. Derek looked up from his phone, his expression unreadable. "Of course. What's up?" Sophia sat across from him, clutching the envelope of photos. "I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. No excuses. No deflection. Just the truth." Derek frowned, setting his phone down. "You're scaring me. What's going on?" Sophia hesitated, her throat tightening. But then she took a deep breath and asked, "Are you seeing someone else?" For a moment, Derek didn't respond. His face was a mixture of shock and something else, guilt. That was all Sophia needed to see. "Don't lie to me," she said, her voice breaking. "I already know." Derek leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. "Sophia, it's not what you think." She laughed bitterly. "It never is it? But these," she slid the photos across the table, "tell a pretty clear story." Derek's eyes widened as he flipped through the images. For the first time, he looked genuinely panicked. "Sophia, listen. I can explain." "No," she interrupted. "You don't get to explain. You don't get to twist this into something it's not. I've been here, raising our daughter, keeping this family together, while you—" Her voice cracked, and she took a moment to steady herself. "While you destroyed it." Derek reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "I never meant to hurt you," he said softly. "Tessa, it wasn't serious. It just happened." Sophia stared at him, her anger rising. "It just happened? You don't accidentally walk into a hotel with someone. This wasn't a mistake, Derek. It was a choice. Over and over again." Derek's shoulders slumped. "I don't know what to say." "Say nothing," Sophia snapped. "Because honestly, I don't care anymore." That night, Sophia slept in Emma's room, holding her daughter close as tears streamed down her face. For the first time, she let herself grieve, not just for the betrayal, but for the life she thought she had. The husband she thought she knew. Over the next few weeks, things escalated. Sophia moved into survival mode, focusing on Emma and leaning on Amanda for support. She met with a lawyer, started separating their finances, and even began looking for a job, something she hadn't needed to do in years, thanks to Derek's income. Meanwhile, Derek tried to repair the damage. He apologized, promised to end things with Tessa, and even suggested marriage counseling. But Sophia couldn't bring herself to trust him. The wounds were too fresh, the betrayal too deep. One evening, Sophia sat on her porch with Amanda, sipping wine and watching the sunset. "Do you think I'm making the right decision?" she asked. Amanda didn't hesitate. "Absolutely. You deserve better, sophomore. You've always deserved better." As the days turned into weeks, Sophia began to find her strength again. She reconnected with old friends, rediscovered hobbies she'd abandoned, and started envisioning a life without Derek. It wasn't easy, but it felt like a step toward healing. She also made a point to be there for Emma, ensuring her daughter felt loved and supported despite the tension at home. Emma, wise beyond her years, seemed to sense the shift. "Are you and Daddy okay?" she asked one night as Sophia tucked her in. Sophia smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair from Emma's face. "We're figuring things out, sweetheart. But no matter what, I'll always be here for you." Emma nodded, her small hand clutching Sophia's. "I love you, Mommy." In that moment, Sophia realized that while her marriage might be falling apart, her role as a mother was stronger than ever. And for now, that was enough. Thank you for sticking with me through this part of the story. Don't forget to like, share, and comment your thoughts. Your support means the world. And if you're enjoying this journey, make sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the next chapter. Stay tuned, things are about to get even more intense. Sophia's decision to take control of her life sent ripples through every aspect of her world. The calm, accommodating wife Derek had grown used to was gone, replaced by a woman determined to rebuild her life on her own terms. For the first time in years, she wasn't just surviving, she was fighting for her future. The cracks in Derek's facade widened as he realized that Sophia wasn't backing down. His charm and promises no longer had the power to disarm her. Instead, he faced a version of her that was resolute, composed, and utterly unwilling to tolerate more lies. One cold December evening, Derek tried once again to plead his case. "Sophia, I know I've made mistakes," he said, standing in the kitchen while she prepared Emma's school lunch for the next day. "But you can't just throw away everything we've built." Sophia didn't even look up. "Everything we've built?" she asked, her tone icy. "You mean everything I've held together while you tore it apart?" He took a step closer, desperation seeping into his voice. "I ended things with Tessa. I swear, it's over." She finally looked at him, her gaze unflinching. "It wasn't just Tessa, Derek. It was the lies. The disrespect. The fact that you looked me in the eye, day after day, and made me feel like I was crazy for doubting you. This isn't something you can fix with promises." Derek's shoulders slumped, and for a moment, he seemed genuinely remorseful. But Sophia couldn't afford to trust him, not after everything she'd uncovered. She already started the process of filing for divorce, a fact she hadn't yet shared with him. She wasn't ready for that confrontation. Not yet. Instead, she focused on creating stability for Emma, who had started asking more questions about why her parents were arguing so often. Sophia did her best to shield her daughter from the worst of it, but the tension in the house was impossible to ignore. One afternoon, Sophia picked Emma up from a friend's birthday party and found her unusually quiet on the drive home. "What's on your mind, sweetie?" she asked gently. Emma hesitated before speaking. "Mommy, why doesn't Daddy smile anymore? Is it because he's mad at me?" Sophia's heart broke at the question. She pulled the car over to the side of the road and turned to face her daughter. "Oh, Emma, no. This has nothing to do with you. Sometimes grown-ups have problems that they need to work through, but it doesn't mean they love you any less." Emma nodded, but the uncertainty in her eyes lingered. That night, as Sophia tucked her into bed, she made a silent vow: whatever happened between her and Derek, she would do everything in her power to protect Emma's sense of security and happiness. But protecting Emma didn't mean avoiding the hard truths. Sophia knew she needed to confront Derek about the divorce sooner rather than later. With Amanda's encouragement, she set a date to break the news. That conversation happened on a Saturday morning, over coffee at the kitchen table. Sophia had barely slept the night before, running through every possible scenario in her mind. But when the moment came, she was calm and composed. "I've decided to file for divorce," she said, her voice steady. Derek froze, his coffee cup halfway to his lips. "What?" "It's over, Derek. I can't do this anymore." He set the cup down, his expression shifting between anger and disbelief. "You're really going to give up on us? On our family?" "You gave up on us the moment you started seeing Tessa," Sophia replied. "I'm just choosing to move forward instead of pretending everything's fine." Derek leaned back in his chair, his jaw tightening. "And what about Emma? Have you thought about how this will affect her?" "Of course I have," Sophia said, her voice softening. "But staying in a broken marriage isn't what's best for her. She deserves to grow up in a home where there's honesty and respect." Derek didn't respond immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "You're making a mistake." "No, Derek. I made a mistake when I trusted you to value this family. Now I'm just correcting it." The days that followed were a whirlwind of paperwork, lawyer meetings, and tense exchanges between Sophia and Derek. He fought the divorce at first, insisting they could work things out, but Sophia stood her ground. The more he pushed, the more resolved she became. Then came the night of the Christmas party. Sophia had agreed to let Derek take Emma to his company's holiday celebration, despite her reservations. She wanted to give him the chance to prove he could still be a reliable father, even if their marriage was ending. That evening, Sophia stayed home, wrapping presents and trying to enjoy a quiet night to herself. But around 9 p.m., her phone buzzed with a call from Amanda. "You need to get down to the office building right now," Amanda said, her voice urgent. "Why? What's going on?" "It's Derek. He's at the party with Tessa." Sophia felt a wave of anger and disbelief wash over her. "Emma's with him. He promised." "I know," Amanda interrupted. "That's why you need to be here. I don't think Emma's seen anything yet, but it's bad, sophomore." Sophia didn't hesitate. She grabbed her coat and car keys, her heart pounding as she drove to the venue. When she arrived, the scene inside was worse than she'd imagined. Derek and Tessa were in a corner, laughing and chatting like they didn't have a care in the world. Emma, thankfully, was sitting with a group of other children, oblivious to what was happening. Sophia stormed over to Derek, her anger boiling over. "What the hell is this?" she demanded. Derek's smile vanished as he turned to face her. "Sophia, this isn't." "Save it," she snapped. "You brought our daughter here, knowing she might see this? How dare you?" Tessa tried to interject, but Sophia held up a hand. "Don't. You're not worth my breath." Without another word, Sophia grabbed Emma and left the party, ignoring Derek's attempts to stop her. In the car, Emma sensed her mother's tension but didn't ask questions. Sophia was grateful for that small mercy. When they got home, Sophia tucked Emma into bed and then let herself cry for the first time in weeks. Not because she still loved Derek, but because she hated the thought of Emma being caught in the crossfire of his selfishness. The Christmas party incident was the final straw. From that point on, Sophia made it clear to Derek that her priority was Emma, and that meant setting firm boundaries. She limited his visits and insisted they meet in neutral locations when handing off Emma for his parenting time. Derek didn't like it, but Sophia didn't care. She wasn't going to let him continue disrupting their lives. Through it all, Amanda remained a constant source of support. "You're stronger than you realize," she told Sophia one evening over a bottle of wine. "You've been through hell, and you're still standing." "I don't feel strong," Sophia admitted. "I feel exhausted." "That's because you're human," Amanda said. "But trust me, you're going to come out of this stronger than ever." Amanda's words proved prophetic. Over the next few months, Sophia began to rebuild her life piece by piece. She found a job at a local marketing agency, reconnected with old friends, and even started taking yoga classes to help manage her stress. And then, one sunny afternoon in April, she met someone who would change everything. Sophia's life continued to shift as the tension between her and Derek reached its boiling point. She had always thought of herself as someone who avoided conflict, someone who would rather find compromise than escalate a fight. But Derek's actions, and his refusal to take responsibility, had pushed her past the point of compromise. April arrived, bringing warmer weather and a sense of renewal. Sophia had begun to feel stronger, more independent, even as Derek's attempts to manipulate the situation continued. His latest stunt? Trying to convince mutual friends that Sophia was being unreasonable and tearing the family apart. It all came to a head one evening when Amanda called Sophia with urgent news. "You're not going to believe this," Amanda said, her tone sharp. "Derek's been telling people that you're keeping Emma from him because you're still bitter about the affair." Sophia froze, gripping her phone tightly. "He said that?" "He's playing the victim," Amanda confirmed. "And it gets worse. Tessa's backing him up. She's telling everyone that they're in love and that you're trying to ruin their happiness." Sophia felt her chest tighten. It wasn't just the lies, it was the sheer audacity. Derek and Tessa were rewriting the narrative, painting themselves as the victims in a situation they had created. For a moment, Sophia felt overwhelmed, the weight of everything pressing down on her. But then, something shifted. She wasn't going to let them win. The next day, Sophia met with her lawyer, determined to take action. She gathered every piece of evidence she had, receipts, photos, text messages, and presented them with a calm, deliberate resolve. "We're going to fight back," she told her lawyer. "I don't just want to protect myself. I want to make it clear to everyone who the real victims are here, Emma and me." Her lawyer nodded. "You're doing the right thing. The more organized we are, the stronger your case will be." As the custody hearings approached, Sophia prepared herself for battle. She knew Derek would try to charm his way out of accountability, just as he always had. But she also knew she had the truth on her side. The first day in court was tense. Derek arrived with Tessa, who sat in the back of the room with an air of smug confidence. Sophia, meanwhile, focused on Emma. Her daughter's future was at stake, and she refused to let Derek's deceitful tactics overshadow that. When it was Sophia's turn to speak, she recounted everything: the late nights, the lies, the betrayal. She presented the photos from the private investigator, the receipts from Derek's outings with Tessa, and even text messages where Derek admitted to the affair. Derek's lawyer tried to argue that Sophia was overreacting, that the affair had nothing to do with his ability to be a good father. But Sophia's lawyer countered with precision, pointing out how Derek's actions had directly impacted Emma's stability and well-being. The judge listened carefully, their expression unreadable. But as the day wore on, Sophia began to feel a glimmer of hope. For the first time, she felt like the truth was finally coming to light. The climax of the hearing came when Derek was called to testify. Under questioning, he tried to downplay his actions, insisting that he had always been a dedicated father. But when pressed about the Christmas party incident, and his decision to bring Tessa around Emma, his calm facade began to crack. "I didn't think it would be a big deal," Derek said, his voice defensive. "Emma didn't even notice." Sophia couldn't hold back anymore. "She's 6 years old, Derek. Of course she noticed. And even if she didn't, what kind of example do you think you're setting?" The tension in the room was palpable as the judge intervened, reminding both parties to remain civil. But Sophia's words lingered in the air, and for the first time, Derek seemed to realize that he wasn't going to talk his way out of this. The hearing ended with the judge reserving their decision, but Sophia felt a sense of relief. She had spoken her truth, and no matter what happened, she knew she had done everything in her power to protect Emma. In the days that followed, Sophia focused on moving forward. She spent her free time with Emma, planning weekend outings and creating new traditions that were just for the two of them. She also began to open herself up to the possibility of a new chapter in her life, one where she wasn't defined by her relationship with Derek. It was during one of those outings that Sophia ran into someone unexpected. She and Emma were at the local park, enjoying a sunny afternoon, when a man approached them. He was tall, with kind eyes and a warm smile. Sophia recognized him immediately: Jake, a single dad whose daughter was in Emma's ballet class. "Hey, Sophia," Jake said, his voice friendly. "Small world." "Hi, Jake," Sophia replied, surprised but pleased. "What brings you here?" "Just taking Ava out to enjoy the weather," he said, gesturing toward a little girl playing on the swings. "How about you?" "Same," Sophia said, glancing at Emma, who was climbing the jungle gym with a determined expression. Jake hesitated for a moment, then added, "I heard about everything you're going through. I just wanted to say, if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm around." Sophia felt a wave of gratitude. "Thank you. That means a lot." They chatted for a while longer, and as they talked, Sophia found herself smiling, really smiling, for the first time in what felt like forever. Jake's presence was calming, his words thoughtful and genuine. It wasn't much, but it was a reminder that there were still good people in the world. As the afternoon wore on, Sophia felt a renewed sense of hope. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but she was ready to face it. She had her daughter, her friends, and now, maybe even the possibility of new beginnings. The climax of her story was still unfolding, but one thing was clear: Sophia wasn't just surviving anymore. She was building a new life, one step at a time. Sophia's encounter with Jake at the park planted a seed of possibility, but life wasn't ready to let her move forward just yet. The custody case with Derek was still looming, and every interaction with him seemed to add more fuel to the fire. A week after the court hearing, Sophia received an email from her lawyer. Attached was a document outlining Derek's latest demands: joint custody, unrestricted visitation rights, and a reduction in child support payments. It was a bold move, one that showed Derek was still trying to manipulate the system in his favor. Sophia clenched her fists as she read through the document. Her lawyer's note at the bottom made it clear they had options to counter his demands, but it didn't make the situation any less infuriating. Amanda, ever the voice of reason, came over that evening with wine and a pep talk. "He's trying to rattle you," Amanda said, pouring 2 glasses. "He knows you're standing your ground, so he's throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks." "Well, it's working," Sophia admitted, taking a sip of wine. "I'm so tired of fighting him on every little thing." Amanda placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're stronger than this. Don't let him win." The next court date approached quickly, and this time, Sophia was prepared for battle. Her lawyer had gathered a mountain of evidence that painted a clear picture. Derek's actions weren't just irresponsible, they were actively harmful to Emma's well-being. From the Christmas party fiasco to his attempts to involve Tessa in Emma's life without Sophia's consent, it all added up to a pattern of selfishness and poor judgment. The day of the hearing, Derek arrived with his usual air of confidence. Tessa was noticeably absent, likely on the advice of his legal team. Sophia, meanwhile, sat with her lawyer, her heart pounding but her resolve unshaken. The pivotal moment came when Sophia was called to testify. She spoke calmly and clearly, recounting the events of the past year. Her voice wavered only once, when she described Emma's question about whether Derek was mad at her. The memory still stung, but it also fueled Sophia's determination to protect her daughter. When it was Derek's turn to speak, his demeanor shifted. He tried to paint himself as a devoted father who had simply made a few mistakes. But under cross-examination, his story began to unravel. Questions about his relationship with Tessa, his financial irresponsibility, and his disregard for Sophia's boundaries left him visibly flustered. The courtroom was silent as the judge reviewed the evidence. When they finally spoke, their tone was firm. "It is clear that Mr. Allen's actions have not prioritized the best interests of the child. Custody will remain with Mrs. Allen, with limited, supervised visitation from Mr. Allen." Sophia exhaled deeply, relief washing over her. It wasn't just a victory. It was validation that her fight hadn't been in vain. But Derek wasn't finished. As they left the courtroom, he pulled Sophia aside, his face a mask of anger. "You think you've won?" he hissed. "This isn't over." Sophia met his gaze without flinching. "It is for me. Move on, Derek." That confrontation marked a turning point. For the first time, Sophia felt truly free from Derek's hold. She knew he would try to make things difficult. His ego wouldn't allow him to let go quietly. But she also knew she had the strength to stand her ground. In the weeks that followed, Sophia focused on rebuilding her life. She threw herself into her work at the marketing agency, finding fulfillment in projects that allowed her to be creative and collaborative. Emma thrived under the stability of their new routine, her laughter filling the house in a way that reminded Sophia of what really mattered. One evening, Sophia received a text from Jake. It was simple and unassuming. "Hey, would you and Emma like to join Ava and me for a picnic this weekend?" Sophia hesitated for a moment before replying. "We'd love to. Thanks for inviting us." The picnic turned out to be exactly what Sophia needed. Jake was kind and easygoing, and their daughters got along like old friends. For the first time in a long time, Sophia felt a flicker of hope, like maybe, just maybe, she could find happiness again. As the sun set over the park, Jake turned to Sophia with a thoughtful expression. "You've been through a lot," he said. "But you're still standing. That says a lot about you." Sophia smiled, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt in years. "It hasn't been easy," she admitted. But I'm learning to let go of what I can't control. Jake nodded. That's a lesson worth learning. The weeks turned into months, and slowly but surely, Sophia began to heal. Her relationship with Jake grew naturally, without the pressure or drama that had defined her past with Derek. She didn't rush into anything, but she also didn't hold herself back. Derek, meanwhile, continued to spiral. His limited visitation rights frustrated him, and his attempts to challenge the custody arrangement were repeatedly shut down by the court. Tessa eventually left him, tired of the baggage and drama that came with their relationship. Sophia didn't take pleasure in Derek's downfall, but she also didn't waste energy feeling sorry for him. She was focused on her own path, one that was no longer tied to his mistakes. As the first anniversary of her decision to leave Derek approached, Sophia reflected on how far she'd come. She had gone from feeling trapped and powerless to rediscovering her strength and independence. And while the scars of her past would always remain, they no longer defined her. One evening, as she and Emma baked cookies in their cozy kitchen, Emma looked up at her with a curious expression. "Mommy, are you happy?" Sophia paused, then smiled. "I think I am, sweetheart. I really think I am." And for the first time in a long time, she meant it. Sophia's life seemed to be finding balance again, but as anyone who's faced their share of turmoil knows, peace can be fleeting. Just as she began to feel secure in her new routine, Derek managed to throw another wrench into her carefully rebuilt life. It started with a phone call late one evening. Sophia was in the middle of helping Emma with a school project when her phone buzzed on the counter. The caller ID flashed Derek's name. She hesitated before answering, bracing herself for whatever fresh drama he was about to unleash. "What do you want, Derek?" Sophia asked, keeping her tone firm. His voice was calm, almost unnervingly so. "I need to talk to you. In person." Sophia glanced at Emma, who was busy coloring a poster for her science fair. "This isn't a good time." "It's important," Derek insisted. "And it's about Emma." That got her attention. "What is it?" "I'd rather not do this over the phone. Can we meet tomorrow? Somewhere neutral?" Sophia sighed, the familiar weight of dread settling in her chest. "Fine. Noon at the coffee shop on Main." The next day, Sophia arrived at the cafe early, choosing a seat by the window where she could watch the world go by. She tapped her fingers on the table, trying to push away the growing sense of unease. When Derek finally arrived, he looked different, disheveled, like he hadn't slept in days. "What's this about?" Sophia asked as soon as he sat down. Derek leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I lost my job." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and unexpected. Sophia blinked, unsure of how to respond. "What happened?" "The company's downsizing," he said, running a hand through his hair. "They said my position was redundant." Sophia frowned. "And what does this have to do with Emma?" Derek hesitated, his gaze darting around the room. "I need you to reconsider the custody agreement. I can't afford to keep paying child support at the current rate." There it was, the real reason for his sudden outreach. Sophia's initial shock gave way to anger. "Are you serious right now? You think you can just waltz in here and ask me to change the agreement because you're having financial trouble?" "I'm not asking," Derek said, his tone hardening. "I'm telling you. If we don't renegotiate, I'll take this back to court." Sophia's jaw tightened. "And what exactly are you going to tell the judge? That you lost your job because of your own choices? That you've consistently put yourself above your daughter's needs?" Derek's face flushed, but he didn't back down. "I'm trying to make this work, Sophia. But I can't do it if you're going to bleed me dry." Sophia stood, grabbing her bag. "This conversation is over. If you want to take me back to court, go ahead. But don't think for a second that I'm going to let you manipulate me into giving you what you want." She walked out without looking back, her heart pounding. Derek's desperation was palpable, but Sophia wasn't about to let him drag her down with him. She had worked too hard to rebuild her life to let him dismantle it again. The weeks that followed were tense. Derek made good on his threat to revisit the custody agreement, filing a petition to reduce his child support payments and request more visitation. For Sophia, it felt like déjà vu, another battle she hadn't asked for but couldn't avoid. Her lawyer reassured her that their case was strong, but that didn't make the process any less draining. Sophia found herself reliving old wounds, her anger and frustration bubbling to the surface as she prepared for another round in court. Meanwhile, Jake became a steady source of support. He listened without judgment, offering encouragement and reminding Sophia of her strength when she needed it most. Their relationship had grown slowly but steadily, and while Sophia was still cautious, she couldn't deny the comfort he brought to her life. One evening, as they sat on her porch watching the sunset, Jake reached for her hand. "You're going to get through this," he said. "You've already been through worse." Sophia smiled, squeezing his hand. "Sometimes it feels like it never ends." "Maybe it doesn't," Jake said. "But that doesn't mean you have to face it alone." His words stayed with her in the days leading up to the court hearing. When the day finally arrived, Sophia walked into the courtroom with her head held high, ready to face whatever Derek threw at her. The hearing was tense from the start. Derek's lawyer tried to paint him as a struggling father doing his best under difficult circumstances, while Sophia's lawyer countered with evidence of his continued irresponsibility. The judge listened carefully, their expression unreadable. The turning point came when Sophia took the stand. She spoke from the heart, describing the impact Derek's actions had had on Emma and on their family as a whole. She didn't sugarcoat the truth, but she also didn't stoop to personal attacks. Her focus was on Emma's well-being, and that sincerity shone through. When it was Derek's turn to testify, his frustration got the better of him. He lashed out, blaming Sophia for his financial troubles and accusing her of trying to alienate him from Emma. His outburst only served to highlight the very behaviors Sophia had been fighting against. In the end, the judge ruled in Sophia's favor. The custody agreement remained unchanged, and while Derek's child support payments were adjusted to reflect his unemployment, they weren't eliminated entirely. As the hearing concluded, Sophia felt a sense of relief unlike anything she'd experienced before. She had stood her ground, and she had won, not just for herself, but for Emma. Outside the courtroom, Derek approached her one last time. "I hope you're happy," he said bitterly. Sophia looked him in the eye, her voice calm and steady. "I'm not happy, Derek. But I'm at peace. And that's enough." The aftermath of the custody hearing brought a mix of relief and exhaustion for Sophia. While the ruling reaffirmed her commitment to protecting Emma, it also underscored the emotional toll of constantly fighting Derek's manipulations. Still, she knew this wasn't just about her. It was about creating a safe, stable environment for her daughter. Sophia's days returned to their new normal. She dove into her work at the marketing agency, finding satisfaction in small victories and creative projects. Emma seemed to thrive as well, her laughter once again filling their home. But despite the progress, there was an unshakable tension in the air, a feeling that Derek wasn't finished causing trouble. That tension came to a head on a Friday evening in early summer. Sophia had just finished dinner with Emma when her phone buzzed with a message from Amanda. "We need to talk." Derek stirring the pot again. Sophia's stomach dropped. She called Amanda immediately, her voice tight with worry. "What's going on?" "Apparently Derek's been telling people that you're keeping Emma from him. He's even been showing up at mutual friends' events, playing the victim." Sophia pinched the bridge of her nose, her frustration mounting. "Unbelievable. I thought we were done with this." Amanda sighed. "It gets worse. He's been posting about it on social media. He's making you out to be the villain, sophomore." Sophia felt a familiar knot of anger and anxiety form in her chest. Derek's pattern of deflecting blame and twisting the narrative was nothing new, but the public nature of his campaign was a step too far. The next morning, Sophia decided to confront Derek directly. She didn't want to fuel his drama, but she also couldn't let his lies go unchecked. She called him, her tone firm and unwavering. "Derek, we need to talk." "What now?" he replied, his voice dripping with exasperation. "I know what you've been saying about me," Sophia said. "And it needs to stop. There was a pause on the other end of the line before Derek spoke again. I'm just telling the truth, Sophia. People deserve to know what kind of person you really are. Sophia's grip on her phone tightened. The truth? You mean the version of events you've twisted to make yourself look like the victim? Call it whatever you want, Derek said. But you can't stop me from telling my side. Sophia took a deep breath, refusing to let his words get under her skin. You can tell whatever story you want, Derek. But if you keep dragging Emma and me through your mess, I won't hesitate to take legal action. You're unbelievable, Derek muttered before hanging up. Sophia stared at her phone, a mix of frustration and determination coursing through her. She knew Derek's behavior wasn't about Emma, it was about control. And she was done letting him control any part of her life. Later that day, Sophia met with her lawyer to discuss her options. Together, they drafted a cease and desist letter, making it clear that Derek's public slander would not be tolerated. Sophia felt a sense of empowerment as she signed the letter, knowing she was taking another step to protect herself and her daughter. Meanwhile, Jake continued to be a steady source of support. Over the weeks, their bond deepened, and Sophia found herself opening up to him in ways she hadn't with anyone else. One evening, as they sat on her porch with cups of tea, Jake broached the subject of their growing connection. I know you've been through a lot, he said gently, and I don't want to rush anything. But I care about you, Sophia. And I'd like to see where this could go. Sophia smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. I care about you too, Jake. I want to take things slow. Slow is fine, Jake said with a warm smile. As long as we're on the same page. Their conversation marked a turning point for Sophia. For the first time since her marriage ended, she allowed herself to hope for a future that wasn't weighed down by the past. But Derek, true to form, wasn't done creating chaos. A week after receiving the cease and desist letter, he retaliated by filing a motion to modify the custody agreement yet again, claiming that Sophia was alienating Emma from him. The motion was baseless, but it still required a response. Sophia felt the familiar pang of dread as she prepared for another round of legal battles. But this time, she wasn't alone. Amanda, Jake, and her lawyer rallied around her, offering encouragement and reminding her of the strength she had already shown. The courtroom showdown was tense but decisive. Sophia's lawyer presented evidence of Derek's public slander and his pattern of erratic behavior, painting a clear picture of his ongoing attempts to manipulate the situation. Derek's own testimony, filled with self-pity and contradictions, only served to undermine his case. When the judge ruled in Sophia's favor once again, Derek's anger was palpable. But for Sophia, the victory felt like a turning point, not just in the custody battle, but in her journey toward reclaiming her life. Outside the courthouse, Sophia hugged her lawyer, tears of relief streaming down her face. Thank you, she said. For everything. You did the hard part, her lawyer replied with a smile. You stood your ground. That evening, Sophia and Emma celebrated with ice cream and a movie night. As they laughed and cuddled on the couch, Sophia felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. The storm that had overshadowed their lives was finally beginning to clear. Jake stopped by later that night, bringing flowers and a smile that made Sophia's heart flutter. They sat on the porch, watching the stars, and for the first time, Sophia allowed herself to truly believe in the possibility of happiness. I'm proud of you, Jake said, his voice soft. You've been through so much, and you've come out stronger. Sophia looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. I couldn't have done it without you. As the summer night stretched on, Sophia realized that her journey wasn't just about surviving, it was about building something new. And with Jake by her side, she felt ready to embrace whatever came next. Sophia's court victory brought a sense of stability she hadn't felt in years, but it also came with the realization that Derek wasn't likely to disappear from her life entirely. He had lost the battle, but his bitterness lingered, casting a shadow over the fresh start Sophia was determined to build. Weeks passed, and Sophia settled into a rhythm. Emma was thriving, her bubbly personality shining brighter now that the tension at home had eased. Jake had become a steady presence in their lives, his kindness and patience a stark contrast to the chaos Derek had brought. And yet, the sense of finality Sophia craved still eluded her. The first major turning point came on a warm Saturday afternoon. Sophia and Emma were enjoying a picnic at the park when Derek showed up unannounced. He approached them with an air of forced casualness, holding a small gift bag. "I wanted to see Emma," he said, his voice a little too loud and cheerful. Sophia stiffened. "You're supposed to schedule visits in advance, Derek." "It's just a quick stop," he replied, crouching down to Emma's level. "I brought you something, sweetheart." Emma hesitated, glancing at Sophia for approval. Sophia gave a small nod, not wanting to upset her daughter. Emma opened the bag to find a plush toy, a bright pink unicorn with sparkly eyes. She smiled politely, but there was a flicker of hesitation in her expression. "Thank you, Daddy," Emma said quietly. Derek beamed, clearly oblivious to her discomfort. "I miss you, kiddo. How about we plan a fun day together soon?" Sophia stepped in before Emma could answer. "You can coordinate that through the court-appointed supervisor, Derek. This isn't the time or place." Derek's smile faded, and his gaze shifted to Sophia. "You really can't let anything slide, can you?" Sophia held her ground. "I'm not doing this here. If you want to talk, we can do it through the proper channels." Derek stood, his posture tense. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Sophia didn't flinch. "And you're making it harder for Emma. Think about that." The tension was palpable as Derek turned and walked away, leaving Sophia and Emma to finish their afternoon in peace. It was a small victory, but it reinforced Sophia's commitment to protecting her daughter from Derek's instability. Later that evening, Sophia confided in Jake about the encounter. "It's like he doesn't get it," she said, frustration lacing her voice. "He thinks he can just waltz back into Emma's life without taking responsibility for the damage he's done." Jake listened quietly, his hand resting on hers. "He's trying to hold on to control," he said. "But the fact that you're not letting him is a testament to how far you've come." Sophia smiled, grateful for Jake's steady presence. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "You won't have to find out," Jake said softly. But Derek wasn't finished testing boundaries. Over the next few weeks, Sophia noticed small signs that he was trying to undermine her efforts to move on. He left messages on her voicemail, each one dripping with passive-aggressive remarks about her parenting. He dropped by mutual friends' gatherings uninvited, spinning his version of events to anyone who would listen. It was clear he couldn't accept that Sophia had taken control of her life. The final straw came during Emma's school play. It was a big night for Emma, who had worked hard on her role as a woodland fairy. Sophia and Jake sat together in the audience, proud smiles on their faces as they watched Emma shine on stage. But when the lights came up for intermission, Sophia spotted Derek lingering near the back of the auditorium. Her stomach sank as she watched him approach, his eyes narrowing when he saw Jake sitting beside her. "Nice date," Derek said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Sophia stood, blocking his path. "This is Emma's night. Don't ruin it," Derek scoffed. "I'm here for my daughter, Sophia. Don't act like you have the moral high ground." Jake stood as well, his presence calm but firm. "Maybe now's not the best time for this conversation." Derek's gaze shifted to Jake, and his expression darkened. "And who are you to tell me what's best for my daughter?" Sophia stepped between them, her voice low and steady. "Enough, Derek. If you can't control yourself, you can leave." For a moment, Derek looked like he might argue, but then he glanced around and seemed to realize people were watching. He muttered something under his breath and stalked off, leaving Sophia and Jake to return to their seats. Emma's performance ended without further incident, but the encounter left Sophia shaken. She knew Derek's behavior wasn't about Emma. It was about his inability to let go. And she knew it was time to take decisive action to protect the peace she had worked so hard to create. The next morning, Sophia called her lawyer to discuss strengthening the boundaries of their custody agreement. "I'm done letting him disrupt our lives," she said firmly. "Whatever it takes, I want to make sure he can't keep pulling these stunts." Her lawyer outlined several options, including filing for a restraining order if Derek continued to violate the terms of their agreement. Sophia felt a renewed sense of determination as she began the process of documenting every interaction, every incident that demonstrated Derek's unwillingness to respect her boundaries. Through it all, Jake remained a source of strength. He supported Sophia without trying to take over, giving her the space to handle things on her own terms while reminding her that she wasn't alone. "You're doing the right thing," he said one evening as they sat on her porch. "Emma deserves a life free from chaos, and so do you." Sophia nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. "For the first time, I feel like I'm actually in control." And with that control came a sense of hope, a belief that the worst was behind her and that brighter days were ahead. As Sophia finalized the new boundaries in the custody agreement, she felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. It had been a long and grueling battle, but she could finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. Derek's ability to disrupt her life and Emma's routine had been effectively neutralized. And with that, Sophia began focusing on what truly mattered, building a life filled with peace, love, and security. Emma flourished under the new arrangements. With Derek's contact limited and supervised, she felt less torn between her parents. Her confidence grew, and her bubbly personality became a constant reminder to Sophia of why she had fought so hard. One evening, as they baked cookies together, Emma hugged her mother tightly. "Mommy," she said with a shy smile, "I love our home. It feels happy again." Sophia's eyes filled with tears as she kissed the top of her daughter's head. "I love it too, sweetheart. And I love you." As the months passed, Sophia's relationship with Jake continued to deepen. They spent more time together, and he became a gentle and dependable presence in Emma's life. Jake's daughter, Ava, and Emma formed a close bond, their laughter often filling the air during family outings and movie nights. Sophia couldn't help but marvel at how seamlessly Jake had integrated into their world. One afternoon, Jake invited Sophia and Emma to a picnic by the lake. The setting was idyllic, calm waters, a warm breeze, and the scent of fresh flowers in the air. As the girls played nearby, Jake turned to Sophia, a serious but hopeful expression on his face. "Sophia," he began, taking her hand, "I know life hasn't been easy for you. And I know how hard you've worked to create this sense of stability for Emma. But I want you to know that I see you, the amazing mother, the strong, resilient woman, and I'm in awe of everything you've overcome." Sophia's heart swelled at his words. "Jake, you've been such a blessing to us. I don't know how I could have done this without you." He smiled, pulling her closer. "You could have done it. You've always had the strength. I'm just grateful I get to be here with you now." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Jake leaned in, and their kiss marked a new chapter in their relationship. For Sophia, it was a moment of clarity, proof that love could be kind, supportive, and free of the chaos she had once known. Meanwhile, Derek's life continued to unravel. Without the control he had wielded over Sophia, he was left to face the consequences of his own actions. His attempts to gain sympathy from friends and acquaintances fell flat, and he found himself increasingly isolated. Tessa, who had briefly reappeared in his life, left again when it became clear that Derek's charm no longer masked his deeper flaws. Sophia heard occasional updates about Derek through mutual connections, but she no longer let them affect her. For the first time, she felt truly free of his shadow. 1 year after the final custody ruling, Sophia and Jake hosted a small backyard barbecue to celebrate Emma's birthday. It was a sunny, laughter-filled day, with friends and family gathered to honor the little girl who had been the center of Sophia's world. As Emma blew out the candles on her cake, she made a wish and then turned to Sophia. "Mommy, this is the best birthday ever," she said, her eyes sparkling. Sophia hugged her tightly. "That's because you make every day special, my love." As the evening wound down, Jake pulled Sophia aside. "I've been thinking," he said, his tone thoughtful. "I know how much Emma means to you, and how much Ava means to me. I'd love for us to build something even more permanent together." Sophia's breath caught as Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "I know we've taken things slow, and I wouldn't change a thing. But I also know I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Tears welled in Sophia's eyes as Jake opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant ring. Will you marry me? She nodded, unable to speak through the emotion. When she finally found her voice, she whispered, Yes. 1,000,000 times yes. Their engagement marked the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with love, laughter, and the promise of a brighter future. Sophia's journey had been far from easy, but it had taught her the value of resilience, the importance of standing up for herself, and the joy that could come from embracing new possibilities. As she stood in her backyard, watching Emma and Ava chase fireflies under the stars, Sophia felt a profound sense of peace. She had reclaimed her life, rebuilt her family, and rediscovered her capacity for happiness. And in the glow of that moment, she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Sophia's story. It's a powerful reminder that even in our darkest moments, we have the strength to rise and rebuild. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and comment with your thoughts. And make sure to subscribe to the channel for more incredible tales of resilience and transformation. See you in the next video. And there you have it, closure to a journey of heartbreak, growth, and hope.